Welcome to the Voice of Retail. I'm your host, Michael LeBlanc. This podcast is brought to you in conjunction with Retail Council of Canada, and this episode is brought to you by omNovos, Canada's retail customer engagement solutions provider. On this episode, we go to Winnipeg to meet Mark Letain, president at EQ3. We talk about the positioning of the business and the dynamic furniture retail industry and how EQ3 helped out the Winnipeg community when they needed it the most. Next, Andrew Armstrong from omNovos joins me to talk about their perspectives on retail data strategy, the jump ball opportunity of the COVID-19 crisis, and how retailers can start their journey towards harnessing consumer data to create genuine loyalty. Lastly, from Boston, Rana Kaliouby, CEO and co-founder of Affectiva and author of Decoded, joins us for an exclusive interview that takes us through her journey from a PhD in computer science and postdoc work at MIT to founding a company that explores the outer edges of AI and the integration of emotion and empathy. But first, let's check in with Mark from EQ3. Mark, welcome to the Voice of Retail. How are you doing today?
We're doing well. Thanks for having me.
Well, it's a real treat to have you on. I really want to learn all about EQ3 and about some great work you're doing both in the stores and here during the COVID crisis. But let's start at the beginning. Let's tell us about yourself. Tell your personal, professional journey, your role at EQ3, and for those that are less aware, perhaps tell us about EQ3.
Yeah, so I'll tell you a little bit more myself. I actually started with Pallister Furniture, actually coming out of the MBA in about 2002. I was working on the operations side with Pallister Furniture, and just around that time, EQ3 had EQ3 actually was one of my clients in the associated related company, and I was working on manufacturing their products. And within about 4 years at Pallister, I came over to EQ3 to run their operations, to run their upholstery manufacturing operations for them. At that time, we had a plant in Winnipeg and we had a plant in Mexico. And then from there, I sort of progressed within the company, taking on varying roles, ended up becoming the chief operating officer in 2012, roughly. And then in 2017, I became the president.
And tell us about EQ3. So I didn't realize until I was doing some research for the interview that you're basically kind of a vertically integrated part of a great Canadian company, Pallister. But tell us about the format, how you go to market. If I walked in the stores, what they look like, and kind of your merchandising strategy. Tell us about that.
Yeah. So how about I think sometimes it's good to go back to the beginning and talk about how it really kind of emerged out of Pallister as a modern furniture concept. So around 2001, sort of our founder, Peter Thielman, who was the son-in-law of the majority owner and at that time the CEO of Pallister Furniture, he realized around 2000 that modern furniture was really underrepresented in the North American marketplace. So he had sort of that vision to bring more modern options to the furniture market in North America. So they sort of launched the concept of EQ3, supplying modern furniture at the High Point Market, I believe in fall 2001. And the market was really received well by the market. A lot of people love the concept, love the idea, and love the branding so much that there's even retailers that, began to brand galleries EQ3 and later on branded their stores EQ3. So they really did love that modern idea. So it started off really as a wholesale concept. So we designed it, sourced it, and a lot of it we manufactured ourselves. As you might be aware, Pallister is one of the largest upholstery manufacturers in Canada and actually North America. Around 2005, so we were a wholesale concept from 2001 up until about 2004. In 2005, EQ3 decided to try, in order to be a better provider to retail clients, they just decided to open up their first retail store in Winnipeg around 2005. And from there it grew. And so for a while it was a mix of franchises and corporate stores. So it grew from one store in Winnipeg to another store in Calgary. And then, by 2009 we had probably about 15 stores and a lot of franchise clients. But then,
and your stores are located not just in Canada, right? You've got I believe you've got one in New York.
That's correct. So, and we can maybe talk a little bit about that. But what the plan was going into 2020. But we began a pretty concerted retail expansion effort in 2019. So we had our two San Francisco stores that we've had for a long time. But beginning in 2019, we ended up opening up 3 stores in Chicago, and a flagship store in New York, in Chelsea, Manhattan.
So thinking back to the pre-COVID days, like that was only 8 to 10 weeks ago, but it does feel like a bit of a lifetime ago. Mm-hmm. Take me back to your strategy, and you just hinted about it, kind of more stores. You're kind of a mix of the wholesale brand with a brand store. But take me back a bit to the strategy as you saw it in 2019, heading into 2020 and beyond. You're in a category that has had a significant bit of disruption with the likes of Wayfair and just online in general. You've got some big players in the country. You've got a unique perspective with your connection to Pallister. But walk me through how you were thinking about strategy and trends heading into 2020 and beyond.
Yeah, that's a good question. So I think going into 2020, I would say 2019. We realized that we were very, very present in Canada, and that we felt we had a good market penetration in Canada, represented in almost all the major cities in Canada with the exception of a couple. So we felt we were fairly well represented in Canada, but we realized that, if we wanted to grow in the future and grow a little bit more aggressively, that we had to go into the United States market. Around that time as well, we definitely realized that the future was going to be digital, and we saw the emergence of competitors. When we used to think about our competitors 5 years ago, we were thinking about our brick and mortar competitors, and then increasingly, we saw disruption coming from the Wayfairs of the world and the Arcos of the world. So we definitely took the view, going into 2018 even and into 2019, that we really had to employ a bricks and clicks strategy. If we wanted to compete in the long term, meaning that we had to be, that we believe sort of that, our feeling was that the era of pure play retail was coming to an end, and that if brick and mortar stores were gonna survive and thrive, that they had to become good at digital, and we also felt that digital players would eventually look to brick and mortar presence in order to compete for a variety of reasons, but using maybe stores as media, stores as mobile warehouses, and just to make that connection to the consumer, especially as it relates to furniture. So our strategy was to say, we have to become digitally competent. We have to invest in our digital infrastructure, and we also had to use our stores as media in the markets that we were going to go into, and to increase the brand presence. And then to have that overarching experience where somebody can look at our product online, but they want to see it in person, so they can come down and experience our furniture, in real life.
And it's not unusual in your category for people to come in and experience the product firsthand, see it online, experience it firsthand. It's a real advantage, right? There's nothing like sitting in the couch.
Yes.
And then, it is often the case in your category that you're not walking out the door with that product anyway, right? There's always been a delivery component, and in some ways in the industry, there's been a sell. Once I sell it, then I'll make it kind of turnaround. Is that a fair statement about EQ3 as well? Is keeps some stock, but it's not really a cash and carry, so to speak. It is, take a look at the product and we'll ship it and have it at your door. Is that a fair statement?
That's correct. So as it relates, yeah. So, our core competence as a company is in upholstery, because it's something we design and manufacture ourselves. We do, obviously we design and manufacture bedroom categories well over in Indonesia, but in our plant in Indonesia. But, I would say our core product offering and our core competence is in upholstery and is in seating. And so in that sense, we offer a lot of variety, a lot of customization on not only on the cover choice, but on leg choice and on seating and comfort. So we definitely, we're made to order. So people come in and they decide what kind of fabric they want, all the options, and then we make it custom for them. So we are a custom manufacturer.
It reminds me of brands like Indochino, which have talked about the democratization of bespoke clothes, right? That you can make here in Canada and elsewhere. You can have custom designed product made and at a very affordable price point, right? To deliver that kind of great value for the style that people are looking for. So, I want to hang on the trends for just a little bit. Yeah. So as you think about the product that you make, I imagine thinking about condos, which is smaller furniture, more fashion forward. What are the one or two big trends that you and your people had in mind as you were in 2020, 2021 in terms of style? I'm just kind of interested in the product itself for a little bit. What are the style ways, or what was hot, and how were you thinking about the contemporary look of furniture?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I think our design folks would probably wax more poetic than myself on it. But definitely, we were really focusing on sort of that Scandinavian design, not as a knockoff of Scandinavian design, more as an inspiration. So we were really trying to, in a lot of ways, we were trying to. Our moniker is, Canadian by design. So we wanted to be making sure that, we were creating a design aesthetic that was uniquely Canadian. And, while it had European inspiration, whether it's Scandinavian or German, or whether it's, it's mid-century modern, or how you want to categorize it, we were definitely consider ourselves as a bit of a Canadian design authority as it relates to furniture design. A lot of our designs are original ourselves. We also partner with other Canadian designers on a lot of our products, and we're proud to do that. And we've done that in the past with bringing highlighting Canadian designers' works through trade shows and through events. So that's sort of our orientation is that sort of Canadian by design.
Well, speaking of disruption, you mentioned earlier, we talked about it in the category. There's been a fair bit of disruption, to say the least, with the COVID crisis. Bring us up to speed on where you are in terms of your stores, how you're operating the past 12 weeks. I imagine the stores are closed, but I don't want to jump to any conclusions. It could be different by province. And in the U.S., what's the status of your retail business? As
of Monday of this week, all of our Canadian stores are now open and operating. We're obviously trying to make sure that we've got all of the necessary protocols in place as it relates to making sure that our employees and our customers feel safe and are safe. So social distancing in place, trying to do a lot by appointment. So when people come in the stores, we're making sure that they're paired with a sales associate. And also, we're requiring in several of the markets, particularly the markets are a bit more harder hit, we're requiring people to wear masks and to offer some sanitization.
So when you say people, the employees and customers?
Yes, correct.
Unidirectional, any of that stuff? I mean, you're a specialty. What's your average square foot? Give me a sense of how big you are, because for some, making these unidirectional areas doesn't make sense, and that may be the case with yours. But is there anything? I just really want to touch on operations for a sec beyond the PPE.
Yeah. So our average square footage for our stores is around 10,000 square feet. In some so in some locations we are indicating directions. A lot of our stores, because we're a bit of a specialty furniture retailer, there's not a lot of traffic
right.
you'd see in a mall or in other areas. So it's social distancing is not that difficult in our locations.
You did. I want to talk about this initiative I've been reading here that you did some work with the Main Street Project in Winnipeg. Sounds like a fantastic initiative. Tell us about what you did about furnishing isolation suites. Like this sounds fantastic. Bring us up to speed on what you did.
Yeah, so we learned a little bit through social media that there was a call out from the folks from Main Street Project looking to help furnish their suites. Main Street Project definitely looks after a lot of the vulnerable people in the inner city of Winnipeg. And relating to the COVID crisis, because some of the inner city community was affected, they were trying to find rooms and spaces for people where people who had got COVID could stay, and they were so they found some space, but they really they were looking for furnishings. So they reached out through social media to a number of retailers, and we were happy to respond. So together with Pallister, we were able to, help furnish those rooms. And we were happy to do so.
And you used, as I think about the furniture, you said you upholstery. I guess you've got a lot of people who are very good at sewing at high volumes. It looks like you did a bit of work on masks as well. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so we've been making masks. We started making masks, really for our own employees, and then as it began progressing, we realized there might be a need for other folks to have masks, and we ended up, one of our suppliers in China also provided us some masks. So we donated some masks to one of the local area hospitals. And then we actually, we were reaching out to some businesses to see, if there were some mask requirements that we could fulfill based on what we were manufacturing at the time. And at that time, we did have some spare capacity in our plants, and we were trying to keep our folks busy. So we ended up making an abundance of masks, and sort of went around and provided some masks to some small local businesses who were acquiring them.
I was having a discussion yesterday with someone, and we were talking about. I was making the connection between masks and seatbelts. We'll see where it goes, but it feels like I remember my dad railing against being told he had to wear seatbelts, when they first put those into making them mandatory, and then, the headlights at the front of your car. And I just can't imagine. It's a bit of a side conversation, but it feels like it's going to be weird to walk out of the house without a mask on. So we'll see. I know some retailers are struggling with it from the customer perspective because they don't want to put their employees in the position of being, having to enforce and have that difficult conversation with the customer. But I think over time, my sense is the values of Canadians will start to adjust to let's all wear masks. But I guess we'll see in the fullness of time.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that transition goes.
Let's talk about merchandising trends. I've talked to retailers coast to coast. They've seen some of the most unusual things in their lives, like basket sizes that have blown their minds, products that they had no idea would be popular. And I guess in your category, people are starting to think across, consumers are starting to say, well, this isn't a short-term issue, whether it's I'm going to be working at home now for many, many months, if not forever. Some companies are saying that, or I'm spending a lot more time at home. Maybe I'm not going to do that vacation, and I want to do something to upgrade the house now that I'm spending so much time in it. Maybe the backyard. What kind of have you seen some of these demands or trends? Now, I mean, your stores are now open. You've got online. What are you anticipating? And any early thoughts on the kind of trends you're going to see in your category?
Yeah, I think we've been pleasantly surprised about when up until the COVID crisis, 80% of our revenue was from our brick and mortar locations. 10% of our business was wholesale, and around 10% was e-commerce. And then after COVID happened, we were all pleasantly surprised about how much of the demand shifted to online. So we saw triple digit growth in our online sales, and so it was a pleasant surprise for us to see the significant revenue pickup online. And during the time, we were also, we initially saw the pickup, end of March and early April. We saw the initial pickup in office furniture as people moved into their home office. But later on, as we began to think about how we could keep our factory folks busy here, we began to offering some promotions and some discounts on our custom-made upholstery program to make sure we could, like I said, keep our factories employees. And that was really, really well received. I guess some folks, were spending more time at home, and maybe, like you said, not going on that vacation. They were looking around and thinking maybe they wanted to, upgrade their seating. So we saw a nice pickup in terms of our demand for our seating and upholstery products. So that's been a significant trend for us, at least. And being that's a core capability of us, that really fits in well.
Yeah, back to the beginning of the conversation, you were headed in that direction anyway, right? You were building to that, maybe not a 3 or 4x growth, but in the short term, but it just kind of accelerated the plan you were already on. I suspect.
You know what? It really did, and I think that's a question that you're hearing for retailers now is what does the future look like? But I think again, it's accelerated all of our planning to move more online. And, as a company, we're looking at, to the future, and we're thinking we definitely had a brick and mortar expansion, ambitious expansion underway in the United States. And I think COVID's making us, maybe reconsider how we're going to expand brick and mortar in the future. It's not saying we're not going to open new stores in the future, but I don't think it will be on quite as an ambitious level as we've done in the past. And now we have a lot of our focus now is how do we create a better online experience for our customers, and how do we really bring our vision of being a really of an omni-channel retailer into the forefront, and really do well at having a seamless experience online and in store.
Last couple of questions. First of all, you've mentioned a couple of things. Indonesia, you mentioned, of course, Canada, you mentioned China. How's the supply chain holding up for you? Are you what are you feeling? Do you have any concerns? I've been asking retailers coast to coast how they've been feeling. I remember early on in February, many retailers were concerned about the supply chain coming out of Asia because of COVID. Of course, we had no idea it would hit us as hard as it did, and primarily the issues were supply chain related. How's the supply chain? It sounds like globally. How's the supply chain holding up for you?
You know what? Our supply chain's holding up remarkably well. We did have some disruptions relating to mostly on the fabric supply coming out of Europe and Italy in particular, and because we source a lot of Italian fabrics. But overall, we've held up well. And I think part of that is, again, because of that vertical integration and because we manufacture so much of what we make. And, we're also we were also gearing up for a greater demand level in our U.S. stores. So we were fairly well, our inventory levels were in really good shape heading into the spring, again, because we were forecasting a greater demand with the new U.S. retail locations, and obviously that demand didn't materialize as we went into lockdown. So
now you find yourself a good in stock position, ironically, right?
Yeah. So we're in a very decent in stock position, and in actual fact, we made sure that we kept our manufacturing folks going during the crisis, the COVID. So we didn't take a shutdown day at all. We kept on making products because we thought, we want to make sure that we produce everything. Any customer order that we have, we felt an obligation to make sure that we make that order for our customers. And if they wanted to take delivery of it, they could have that option, or if they wanted to pick up, obviously making sure all the safety protocols are in place for drop-offs. We're doing more threshold deliveries as opposed to going in the customer's home. But we made sure that we were going to deliver the product. So we're still in a great delivery position, and again, we're ready to meet or exceed customer expectations as it relates to delivery times and order fulfillment now coming out of the crisis.
Last question is there at a macro level, is there anything keeping you up at night? It sounds like the business has been well architected, but as you sit back and think about anything from the economic environment to other issues, is there anything you want to call out and say, there's some things out of my control, and this is what keeps me up at night? Because we're just trying to inform ourselves and kind of share with your fellow executives what you're thinking about those kind of big picture concerns. Yeah,
I think similar to probably other folks that you might be talking to. The one thing that keeps me up at night is two things mainly is if there is a second wave that's going to happen in the fall, or what does that look like in terms of shutting down retail again? If that happens in the fall, it's going to be very, very difficult, not only for retailers, but obviously for landlords as well. So it's been hard on retailers. It's been hard on landlords. And, if we do get a second wave and we do have to shut down again for a prolonged period of time, that's going to be very difficult as we discussed, because we still are primarily a brick and mortar retailer. Second to that, I think is right now we just opened up all of our Canadian stores are now opened, and now it's how does the consumer come back, and how are they going to engage with coming into our store locations? So I think those are the two things that are top of mind for me right now. Is again, if there is a second wave and third wave, what does that look like? And again, how is the consumer going to respond coming out of this?
Well, Mark, it's been great to learn about your business, and thank you so much for sharing your insights. And as you think about growing and growing internationally, it's a great Canadian company, a wonderful story to be told. So once again, thanks for being on The Voice of Retail. Really appreciate you taking the time, and I wish you a safe week and successful operations now that you're up and going, and best of luck in the future.
Thanks, Michael. I really appreciate that. It was great being with you.
Andrew, welcome to the Voice of Retail. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, Mike. Thank you.
Well, last time you and I were in person together, I remember it was the Restaurant Canada show early March, and we both were reflecting on what an unusual circumstance it was. In other words, we were on the cusp of something we both felt would be pretty dramatic. It was such an unusual time to, as I said, be on the cusp of the COVID crisis. But we'll get into talking more about that a little bit later. But for now, why don't you tell listeners a bit about yourself, a bit about your personal professional journey, and about omNovos?
Oh, sure. Thanks, Michael. As you know, I'm the Chief Customer Officer at omNovos, and I own sales and marketing. So I spend a lot of my days speaking with retailers and restaurants about their customers and their journeys, their experiences, and mostly about their challenges with personalization and data. I've been doing this for about 20 years now, so I'm not an engineer or coder, but I do speak that technical language. So I often joke that I should change my title to translator or interpreter, because our customers aren't normally immersed in marketing and tools and technology and data like we are. I live and breathe it every single day. And marketing technology has evolved so much in the last few years that I actually end up spending a lot of my time trying to put the right pieces and the right tools in place to help our customers achieve their KPIs.
Now, omNovos is a relatively new company, but you're steeped in a organization that has a long pedigree in big data. I think like 40 years. Tell me about the background about omNovos and your, I don't know, is it your parent company or sister company or cousin company? Tell us about that.
Well, yeah, exactly. We're a spin-off of a company called Data Kinetics, and Data Kinetics has been serving the global Fortune 500 and specifically banks and financial services companies, the top credit card companies, insurance companies, and serving their data needs for about 40 years. So we've taken that pedigree and tried to apply it to the retail space, a space that we felt several years ago really needed some help on the marketing technology side, the digital transformation side. So quite frankly, omNovos is now Canada's customer engagement solutions company. We give retail and hospitality industries the tools that they need to do real-time personalization using their own customer data. To elaborate a little further, we do that by offering some front-end and back-end tools as well as some services. Our front-end customer-facing tools basically are there to enable the shopper or the guest to interact directly with the brand, but at the same time provide a wealth of information about them, their likes, their dislikes, their preferences, their transaction history, etc. And all that data then gets integrated and attributed into our back-end platform and into what we call the single user profile, which then forms the basis for the logic, which offers, the messages, the content, the promos, whatever content it is that you want to send to the customer. But more importantly, the content your customer actually wants to receive. And all of that gets triggered automatically based on their real-time actions or behaviors with your brand. In the end, you end up creating truly personalized customer experiences. And then lastly, of course, the services I mentioned, they're there to backstop our customers. Again, as I mentioned, there's not that familiarity with marketing technology that we have. So we're there to help them develop that desired experience and to pull all of these tools and technologies together.
So it's a lot about big data, as it's known. In other words, a lot of data, and then working with both the metadata and the customer-facing data, right, to help your clients understand, the data about the data, right, that fundamental content. But it's more than that, right? It's empowering those great decisions with their own content and their own learnings, right?
Exactly. It is about choosing the data, finding the data, and actually activating that data into that single user profile. Segmentation is one thing. True personalization is a completely different thing. And it's really about your specific data.
I want to start back to pre-COVID, the time before, as some of us now call it. 2019, you're sitting in your boardroom together with yourself and perhaps some customers thinking about strategy, about what are the big trends and what are you going to work on and what are you going to bring to market and what you are. Tell me about that, because then I want to get to what, if anything, has changed in your approach or for the COVID era. You made this provocative statement about COVID being some kind of gift potentially to retailers. So let's first start, though, as you saw the industry sitting in 2019 forward, how were you thinking about the big trends that you were going to act on and help retailers with?
So it's amazing how much of an impact just 24 hours can have on your view of the world. I literally remember on March 12th, working with a client, we were talking about the next 3 months and the rollout phase. Our project manager had just joined to the project. We were just launching it. And literally by the Friday afternoon, we were mandating everybody to work from home, didn't know what we should do. We canceled all of our plans. We didn't want to, from an advertising, from a shows, from a promotional perspective, we literally paused everything within that 24 hours. And we saw the same thing, and that was basically a reaction, if I'm being 100% truthful, to what we were seeing and hearing over that 24-hour period from our clients on both sides of our business, from the major banks to the retail industry. We, as I said earlier, we roll out contactless tools, and those contactless tools are tools that your customers can use to engage, to be engaged with and engage with your brand, to learn more about the products or scan and pay, things like that, so that you can then take that information and use it on the back end. And we viewed those tools at that time as complementing the in-store experience. Fast forward to the Monday morning, the 16th of March, I think it was, we didn't view those the same way at all anymore. Customers were now starting to, if they were even talking to us, a lot of them went dark for a good 2 to 3 weeks as they tried to figure out their plans going forward. We weren't worried. It wasn't that it's anything we had done. They just were trying to just keep the doors open, keep the lights on more specifically.
So everyone just took some time to assess. So you said something interesting, or you said a lot of interesting things, but when you talked about, you thought about your tools and your approach differently, literally within a 24-hour period. Talk about that. What struck you? And you and I were talking off mic about interview I did on the last episode of The Voice of Retail with Brian Pearson. He talked about this jump ball moment, right? That
exactly.
This is it's a moment in time. So let's talk about how you're thinking differently than you were in 2019 or February.
Well, it took about 3 weeks before we started seeing the signs that people were, okay, we've figured things out, at least initially. I joke that for our organization, we're on plan F now. And that was what we were seeing from our clients, from our big grocers to a huge restaurant chain. They were trying to figure out what it was. And the word contactless hadn't really evolved yet by the week 3. That happened probably around week 6 that you started seeing this concept around contactless shopping. And that's how we ended up seeing things differently. We viewed these tools, these front-end tools like scan and pay or scan and learn, mobile check-in or order and pay. We viewed those as in-store complementary tools. But all of a sudden, when that term came out and we were working with one of our clients and we finished the phase 2 planning and we went, wait a second, aren't all of these tools essentially contactless to begin with? Aren't they a way for you and your customers to do business with one another, to communicate with one another, to interact with one another, and do so in a contactless manner? And it didn't happen overnight. And honestly, I'd love to say that I sat in a meeting one day and thought this through and was weeks ahead of it. And what we had been building all this time was essentially some contactless tools and technologies for retailers to engage their customers. So not an overnight process, but I don't think that was this. I don't think anything's even settled today. I'm sure I'll be on plan G and H before the end of the month.
Now connect that to me or for me to this idea of COVID as a gift and to loyalty. So triangulate those things for me. So, you're right. Contactless in the time before was about payment, modestly about other things, but connect these dots for me.
Absolutely. So, It is a bit of a bold statement, but one of the things that we found a lot of time, and I remember a cartoon that I saw by the Marketoonist. I'm sure you're familiar with him. And I remember this in just late March, early April, where it was a one single strip. It was a picture of an office building up high somewhere in the corner office, zooming in on a board meeting, and the caption goes something like, "We don't need to worry about digital transformation. That's years away." And out the window was this giant wrecking ball with the word COVID-19 on it. That was the reality. That was the moment where everything changed for us, because we'd spent so long working with so many customers who were just getting started. And that's one of the things we do, is we help you get started on this data journey, because it isn't something that a lot of people have ever wrapped their heads around. But it always felt like, okay, there is no sense of urgency. There's no rush for many, many businesses. And then COVID-19 hit, and all of a sudden you no longer had that face time with your customers, that thing that so many businesses have built their reputations on, that one-to-one interaction, the customer service level, all of these things that you've created your own version of loyalty on. And I mean loyalty in the big sense of the word, not in terms of points. But
right.
All of a sudden that went away. And so now all of a sudden digital transformation, how do I use technology now to actually engage my customers in that one-to-one manner? The message we've been saying for years hasn't changed. What has changed is how you deliver that message, whether that's contactless or complimentary in store.
So that's that jump ball moment you've talked about is if you are somewhere along the journey of digital transformation, that path is just accelerated, right? It's, as Carl Boutet says, great retail strategist, the great acceleration, and that kind of holds true. Tell me, let's talk about data for a second and triangulate that data again to the loyalty and to what you do. How do you work with retailers and give me pick up the phone and you get a call from a retailer and the retailer says, "I hear you're great at data and I hear you understand loyalty and the intersection. What now? What's the first thing that you do, and where does that conversation go?"
So that conversation usually starts with an exploration. I think that's one of the other misunderstandings about many vendors in the industry. Yes, I'm a vendor, obviously. The reality is that many vendors are selling a product. It is one thing, and while it's flexible, where most marketers on the vending side miss the mark is they're not making it clear that technology is an enabler. It is not the end all and be all. So when somebody calls me and they say, "I want some of what you're offering," there's no off the shelf offering. Yes, there are products at the core that are designed to support it, but how you want to deliver your customer experience, how do you want to engage your customers, how do you want to create that personalization, that is all individual with each and every vendor, with each and every retailer, with each and every hotel, casino, restaurant that we engage with. So when the phone rings and somebody asks me, "Okay, I'd like to engage with you, where do we start?" It really just starts with sitting down and going, "Okay, what do you have today? What is it that you're trying to accomplish? How do you wish to accomplish that?" Because if you're picking something off the shelf, then your customer experience is going to be no different than that of the guy down the street. Everything a customer experience says is about uniqueness. It's about creating that loyalty. And again, I use the word loyalty in the larger sense. Loyalty is about my affinity for your brand. I don't care about the points. I don't care about the rewards per se. How you make me feel loyal to your brand is by knowing me and rewarding me. That could be points. That could be rewards. But unless they're personalized, it really is no different than every other loyalty program on the planet. I use Air Miles often as an example. I don't go to the LCBO because it has Air Miles, but I do go to the LCBO and use my Air Miles in the hopes of finding a relevant reward at some point in the future. So Air Miles and that concept of loyalty is not a driver for my habits at specific stores. But great customer service, personalized customer services, tools that allow me to engage with you and shop the way I want to shop, whether I'm a Gen X, a Gen Z, a digital native. It doesn't matter. I have the ability to shop how I want. So if I want to scan and pay, right? We talk about contactless shopping usually falls into under the definition. The definition of contactless shopping usually means something to the effect of payments. Well,
well, that's what it used to mean for sure, right? When you talked about contactless, that's what it means. But now it means a whole wide gamut of things. So I love your idea about the capital L loyalty, and so now we're going to create a bunch of, let's call them data points. Consumers are interacting in a contact free but yet data rich environment, right? So this is kind of my last question, and bring it all together for us is, whether it's click and collect or self checkout, visual self checkout, all these things. These are creating data and loyalty points, right? So what's your advice to retailers as they think through their digital transformation strategy around this new world in the COVID era of these intersecting points of data and as you said, capital L loyalty?
I think the number one thing that we end up coming out of every discovery session, realizing with every customer is it's going to be different. The question is how. Oftentimes people have a preconceived notion when they walk into these meetings about what it is they want it to look like. And then we get into unpacking. How do we deliver this? What is it that you're looking to do? I don't have any data. I can't get started with you. Well, that's where it's a combination of where you start on the front end and what you're bringing into that back end. Right? And I use some of the tools as an example. Scan and pay. Scan and pay is a great tool because it allows your customer to walk into a store, scan an item, be connected to your system. But now what they're browsing at, what they put in their cart, what they took out of the cart, what they paid for, what other items were in that cart. And then you have a complete access to their purchase history. Scan and learn is another great contactless technology, right? I'm enabling you through the device that you're all carrying, your mobile device, to scan a barcode on a shelf to learn more about the product. So think of a grocer. I can scan, for example, dragon fruit. What is dragon fruit? What's its nutritional content? What is it? Where is it grown? Is it local? What are great recipes that go with it? And as the recipe suggested, I swipe left or right. And as I say, yes, I like, or no, I don't like, over time, that information kind of adds up to give me a better, more well-rounded picture of you, so that if I realize that you've never selected a recipe with beef in it, for example, then I pretty much the algorithms can pretty much make an assumption that you're vegetarian. Why would I waste my space on my digital flyer promoting beef to you? I'm going to obviously promote the items that you're much more likely to on a cross-sell or an upsell opportunity.
That's a deep integration of data, and that takes a lot of data, right? A lot of data points. So, okay, now I get it. I get your role. How can it's a great conversation because it really touches on many themes that we often talk about on the Voice of Retail. Many guests talk about how can listeners, retailers, and folks in other industries learn more and get a hold of you and learn more about omNovos.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity. So we offer, and we have for a long time, for about a year and a half, but they've really taken off, obviously, since early April. We offer these free strategy sessions, these introductory discovery meetings. There's no commitment. Come in and talk to us because that getting started is that most critical decision that you can make. Get started because the competitors are. And that's where that gift that COVID-19 gave us comes from. Right now is the perfect time to test, try, experiment, because you're getting a pass. If it fails, the customer base is all writing it off to they tried, or it's crazy, we're all trying to figure this out, so you're getting a pass. If it works, great. You've already started building loyalty from that new customer base that may come to you now because they discovered you during COVID. So these free strategy sessions are all about getting to know the customer, helping them understand what they've got, and realizing it's not that complicated to get started today. And they can visit us at realcustomerengagement.com.
Very good. And they can email you directly or contact you through that URL, right?
Correct. Email me directly at amarmstrong@omnovos.com.
Well, Andrew, thanks for being on The Voice of Retail. It's great for us to catch up. Again, I wish soon to be in person, but in the meantime, it was great to catch up with you on the podcast.
Well, thanks, Michael. As always, I really enjoy our chats. Looking forward to the next time we can do so face to face. But in the meantime, really happy to be supporting yourself with this fantastic podcast. The Retail Council of Canada doing tremendous work on behalf of its members across the country. And we're just proud and honored to be able to do what we can to try to help out in this time.
Well, fantastic. Thanks for your contribution. Thanks for those kind words. And I wish you a safe week, and look forward to catching up again soon.
I look forward to it. Thanks, Michael.
Sylvain Charlebois studies food supply chains daily.
On va parler avec Sylvain Charlebois, spécialiste d'industrie agroalimentaire.
Let's bring in Sylvain Charlebois. And joining us now to talk food security is Professor Sylvain Charlebois.
Sylvain Charlebois is the senior director.
Now joined by Sylvain Charlebois.
Sylvain Charlebois is my guest.
This is Sylvain Charlebois, and with our new podcast, The Food Professor, along with my co-host Michael LeBlanc from the Voice of Retail podcast, we'll dive into the recipe for the food, grocery, food service, and restaurant industries, discuss proprietary industry and consumer food-related research, check out fresh new ideas, and talk about whatever half-baked strategies are in the news this week.
So be sure and join Sylvain and I every 2 weeks for in-depth insights and great conversation. Find The Food Professor online and subscribe on Apple, iTunes, Spotify, wherever you enjoy your podcast today. Rana, welcome to the Voice of Retail. How are you doing?
Good. Thank you for having me.
Well, it's my pleasure. I was looking forward to meeting you in person at the Collision Conference in Toronto, but next best thing, we get to talk virtually. I was so looking forward to, and I'm so looking forward to our chat because you touch on so many interesting things, and your personal journey is so interesting. I usually start my interviews by asking people their personal and professional journey, but your journey is so interesting and so well chronicled in your book, Girl Decoded. But why don't you walk us through, for the listeners that are less familiar, or perhaps haven't seen the book, tell us about your personal journey and then your professional journey as well. Now CEO and co-founder of the firm that you're running, and of course a little bit about the firm itself.
Sure. So I grew up in the Middle East. I was born in Cairo and lived around the Middle East in Kuwait and Abu Dhabi. And both my parents were technologists, so I've been kind of exposed to technology all my life. Studied computer science as an undergraduate in Egypt and was just very fascinated by how technology changes the way we connect with each other as humans. And that really became the topic of my PhD at Cambridge University, where I really focused on building the first emotionally intelligent machine. I had this aha moment back then that technology has a lot of IQ, a lot of cognitive intelligence, but no emotional intelligence. So I've been on this mission to humanize technology by bringing emotional intelligence into our devices and our technologies. After Cambridge, I ended up at MIT as a postdoc, thinking I'd be faculty. That was my career goal. And I was super close to it, but I had an opportunity to start a company, Affectiva. And really bring this technology to the world at a very global scale. And that, had the company for 10 years now and applying the technology in all sorts of industries.
And I was going to say, Affectiva is not a new startup. It's kind of I wouldn't say it's an overnight success. It's 10 plus years, right? I mean, it's been a long road. That's early days for AI and the work that you're doing, right? I guess that was informed by your PhD and then the work at MIT. Those were still, though, that's early days thinking ahead of what this technology could do and how it could stretch, right?
Yeah, absolutely. When we first spun out, I mean, this was even pre-smartphones, right? So
right.
Cameras on our devices, and which is how the technology works. So we were very early, and I feel like now's the right time in the market to bring this technology at scale.
Your book, Girl Decoded, it's more than a personal chronicle. But by the way, I love your story about how your passive resistance with your dad, because I think my kids do exactly the same thing. Go get me the black shoe polish. You bring back the brown, and eventually I just give up, and I'm just going to go get it myself. By the way, that I'm sure my kids do the same thing. But your book really more, A, it's a great chronicle, but B, it also lays out what feels like the rails for your life's passion about the business. Tell us about how the book came about. You start with a pretty startling story around human empathy. But am I correct in kind of it lays the rails out and it really informs your work?
Oh, absolutely. So I often say my work, I'm in the AI space. And of course, I've been building technology all my life. But really, it's about the humans and the human connection. That's been the common thread throughout my career. And so I start the book with what I call the empathy crisis. I really do feel that we are dehumanizing each other, whether we are, in how we communicate with each other digitally, but also in how we communicate with each other in the real world. And there's a lot of polarization and a lot of just not having compassion and empathy for others. So, and I feel strongly that technology can be part of the solution. And this is kind of what I lay out in the book. I wanted the book to have a broad audience. So it's written for tech enthusiasts, but it's not written for technology experts or machine learning experts. It simplifies what it means to build an algorithm and train an algorithm and all of that. So hopefully it makes it accessible.
Yeah, I really enjoyed the read. I thought it was all that. Now, facial recognition broadly has been very much in the news of the past week. I think we've seen some organizations say they're not going to use it at all, for like putting a kind of temporary ban on it. It's been a turbulent time in certainly U.S. society and around the world. It seems so society's questioning powerful machine vision coupled with AI. Should we be scared? Has the science outpaced the moral framework of its use?
I think this is absolutely the right question to ask. What I always say is any technology really is neutral valence. It can be used for positive applications, but it also could be abused. And it's up to us as a society to decide how the technology is being deployed. With respect to kind of our space, artificial emotional intelligence, I really think there's amazing benefits for the technology around mental health and road safety, etc. But you could also see how it could be used to discriminate against particular subpopulations, including people of color. So I'm a huge advocate for thoughtful regulation. We never use our technology kind of in a facial recognition context, which is identity recognition. It's often to understand how you're feeling, not who you are. And I think it's the right call to put a temporary ban on facial recognition applications until we all agree on how is it being used, how are people consented, and how make sure that the data is not biased or discriminative in any way.
Yeah, right on. I mean, that's probably and you acknowledge this right up front again in back to the book where you talk about the risk of bias basically amplified, right? And what I worry about when I think of AI is this default where people go, well, the machine said it's so it must be right, without understanding the biases that can be inherently built into any AI. We've kind of jumped a little fast forward a bit. Tell us a bit more about the work you're doing exactly. So retailers listening, for the listeners, tell us a little bit about how you're connecting this emotion and understanding emotion with AI. So what is it that you ultimately want to achieve with that?
Yeah, if you think of just kind of AI in general, a lot of the conversation and the technology is about automation, efficiency, productivity. And I'm saying, well, if you look at human intelligence, it's not just about your IQ, your EQ matters a lot. And I think this is equally true for technology that interacts with humans on a day-to-day basis. And if you kind of dissect, okay, how do people communicate? Only 10% is in the actual choice of words we use. 90% is nonverbal. And it's split between your facial expressions, your body gestures, your vocal intonation. And so Affectiva is really about capturing this 90% of these signals and quantifying them moment by moment and providing that data so that it becomes actionable.
Let's talk about the state of AI in general. We went back a step, forward a step. You're going to be part of Collision based in Toronto, and Toronto's a good center of innovation around AI, as is Montreal. Some very smart people working on AI. So we know great work's being done. What's your assessment of AI, like on a progressive scale, 1 to 10, 10 being whatever the point of arrival is in terms of AI? How far do you think the science has progressed? I remember seeing a lecture saying that, really AI is about as smart as a 3-year-old, which kind of surprised me, but 3-year-olds can be pretty smart. Give me your assessment of what's the current state of AI as you understand it.
I don't think we have AI that's as smart as a 3-year-old. I don't think we're quite there yet. I think what we're seeing is a lot of narrow AI. So a lot of AI that's really good at one thing and it's trained for that one thing, but it doesn't generalize beyond that, which is perfectly fine. If you're thinking about artificial generalized intelligence, I don't think we're close at all. And honestly, I don't even know that that's the ultimate goal. So when you were asking, like, where are we on a scale from 1 to 10, where 10 is the destination, I don't think we all agree on what the destination is. For me, I'm all about building tools that are going to augment people so that we become smarter, more connected, more effective human beings. It's not about taking the role of a human.
Yeah, it's kind of why I phrased the question that way, because I'm not quite sure what the point of arrival is. So I'm glad you kind of addressed that. I don't think there's one kind of agreement on what that is. So you're talking about an EI component of AI. How does that, how in your point, or how in a practical way is that improve the product? And, and I'm asking that in the context of, there's lots of everything from, learning about people's affectations, that's the name, and marrying that with the huge predictive power of AI. Tell me how those two merge and make one better.
Yeah, I think especially if we look kind of at the consumer life cycle, right? Our emotions influence every aspect of our lives, and especially how we make decisions. And these decisions could be really kind of small, like, what you're going to have for breakfast or lunch today, and they could be quite subconscious, to like big decisions, like where are you going to live, and what house are you going to buy, or who are you going to marry, right? And so that has very direct implications to marketers, content creators, retailers, who really want to understand the emotional engagement their consumers have with their products, with their content, with their services, and be able to tap into that part of the decision-making process to really understand consumer behavior. So, the gold standard in doing all of this is to just ask the consumers, which is great. I mean, this is
hard to scale, though. Hard to scale.
And also it taps into a different part of the brain. It taps into the cognitive part of your brain. And what we're trying to do is to tap into the visceral, subconscious, moment by moment emotional response that has a huge impact on your decision-making as a person, but you may not be able to articulate that really well. We've
mentioned you're going to be a part of Collision. What are you going to be talking about on the virtual stage?
I'm going to focus on how this global pandemic has changed the way we connect and communicate. So we've all been catapulted into this universe where, all of our interactions are virtual. How we connect with our teams, how we learn online, my kids are learning online, and also how we engage with audiences. For me, it's like a personal pain point because I had to pivot my book tour from a real book tour where you sign books and, give book talks and all that to virtual events. And usually I'm live streaming to thousands of people like I will be on the Collision stage, virtual stage, but you can't see your audience. You can't riff off the energy in the room. You can't really customize and personalize and adapt in real time the way you would as a speaker. And I just find that really, really challenging and unsettling. And I believe that emotion AI can help solve a big part of that problem.
I do a fair bit of speaking myself, and I have the same qualms because, you on the stage, you're kind of like yourself plus 10%, right? Because you've got to be a bit more dynamic. And I'm trying to find that sweet spot when I'm online. Is 10% too much on a virtual? Is it too much Zoom?
Right.
Is it just too much for the audience, or is it too little? Right? Do I need more interaction, or they just tune out? It's just almost easier to tune out. How can people learn more about you and about the business?
So if you're interested in the applications of our technology in retail and beyond, Affectiva's website has a lot of information, resources, and even a demo that you could try yourself. And if you are interested in the book or connecting with me, I'm very easy to find on social media. I will also say I narrated the book myself. I spent 8 days.
Isn't that fun, right?
Yeah, in a small room, narrating the book. So if you're into audiobooks, please do listen to it.
Well, that's great. I'll put a link to both the company site and also a link to find the book as well in the show notes. So thanks so much for taking the time to speak with the Voice of Retail. It's been a real treat. And I would encourage everybody to read that book and visit the site because it's really leading edge stuff. And thank you for the context and helping us unpack it. So once again, thanks for being on the podcast, and I hope you have a wonderful and safe week.
You too. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, thanks to Mark and Rana for being my guests, and thanks to Andrew and omNovos for the support of this episode. If you like this podcast, you can subscribe on Apple iTunes or your favorite podcast platform. Please rate and review, and be sure and recommend to a friend or colleague in the retail industry. I'm Michael LeBlanc, founder and president of ME LeBlanc Company, Inc. You can learn more about me on www.meleblanc.co or, of course, on LinkedIn. Until next time, have a safe week.